Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf Pesachim Lamates. We're on top at the Mishnah. Ve'elu yirokes she'adam yoytzei behen yidei chayvasai b'Pesach. The following are vegetables that a person can use for mitzvahs marer on Pesach. Bechazeres, he can be yoytzei with lettuce, betamcha with horseradish, ubechar chavina. That's a vine that grows around the trunk of a palm tree. Ube'ulshan with endives. Ube'marar, certain type of plant called marar. Yoytzin behen, he can be yoytzei by eating them bein lachen, whether they're moist, fresh, bein yiveshin, whether they're dry. Aval loy kvushin, but not if they're pickled. Rashi says soaked in vinegar. V'loy shluken, or overcooked to the point that they lose their structure, they get dissolved. V'loy mevushalin, or just plainly cooked, because in these cases they lose their flavor, their bitterness. Umitztar from the kazayis, says the Mishnah, they can be combined for a shir kazayis. You have a little of this variety, a little of the other type, and together you have a kazayis. You can be yotzei in that manner. The Ran asks, why, when it comes to matzah, did the Mishnah not mention that different types of grain can be mitzvah to kazayis, and only here by marar? Does the Mishnah go and mention it? Says the Ran, because perhaps I would think that we have different types of vegetables who have different types of flavors. Perhaps you can join them together for marar. The answer is you can, because they have a common denominator. They're all bitter. So the fact that they all have that thing in common, the bitterness, is what joins them together. So you can go ahead and combine a little of this, a little of that, because sum total you have a kazayis of bitter vegetables. It says the Mishnah, v'yoytzin bekelach shlehen. You can be yoytzin by eating their stalk, not only their leaves, but even using the stalk. Ube d'mai, even if they're d'mai, purchased from Aretz, in which case, with the Rabbanan, you have to do a chumrah and separate tumas and maishras, but as we learned by matzah, since it's only chumrah with the Rabbanan, if you ate the marar, which is d'mai, you're yotz. Ube maserishan shnetot tumasai. This as well we learned by matzah. We're speaking where the maserishan was taken by the Levi before the owner got a chance to do the truma gedolah. So the maserishan shnetot tumasai means the trumas meiser. The 10% was separated from his portion given to the kohen, but the truma gedolah was never addressed. And the chiddush is that it works because it's mutar ba'achila, because the maserishan was given to the Levi before there was any chiyuv of truma gedolah, because he took it when it was still in its stalk form. So since he accepted at that moment, before there was a chiyuv of truma gedolah, so we learn from a pasuk that this maserishan is no longer chayiv in truma gedolah. Finally, says the Mishnah, or maser sheni behegdish nivdu, or you can be yotzei with marar of maser sheni of hegdish, which were redeemed. And the Gemara earlier told us by matzah was speaking that there was no chaymesh added. So although the owner of the maser sheni or the hegdish, who is payda, needs to add a chaymesh, a fifth, so even if he neglected to do so, the pidyon was still activated, and the maser sheni hegdish is now chulin and is edible. Continues the Gemara. We had a list of several types of vegetables which can be used for marar. We began with chazeres. What is that? Chasa, lettuce. Ulshin, what is that? Hindavi, endives. Tamcha, what is that? Amarava. Barbachana, tamchasa shema, it's called tamchasa, which is horseradish. Char chavina, what is that? Amar Rav Shimon Lakish, atzvasa, the dikla. This is vine that grows around the palm tree. And finally, ubim arar, what is that? Mirirta, a certain type of leaf called mirirta, certain type of grass, which is bitter. Tani bar kapara. Elu yirakis, the following vegetables. She'adam yotzei behen nechvasa b'Pesach. A person can use to be yotzei the mitzvah marar. And it's similar to the list of the Mishnah. Be'ulshin, which is the endives, or betamcha, horseradish. Bechar chalen. Rashi says, we're not sure what this is. Bechar chavinen, that's the vine that grows around the palm tree. Ubechazran, with lettuce. Rabbi Yehuda af ulshe sada, ve'ulshe gina b'chazeres. You can use ulshe sada and ulshe gina and also chazeres. Says the Gemara, what's Rabbi Yehuda's chiddush? What's he coming to add to the Tanakama? Ulshe gina v'chazeres hatana l'reisha. In the first part of the Brisa, we already had Ulshegina, which is your standard garden variety of endives, and chazeres. We already included in that list. So what was it really coming to add? Hachikama, this is what he meant to say. Af Ulshei Sada as well, the wild endives, are also considered marar ki Ulshegina, the chazeres, just like the Ulshegina and the chazeres. Af, what else can be added to the marar list? Asvas vetura, umar yirayar. Amalei Rabbi Yesi, so Rabbi Yesi responds to Rabbi Meir. Asvas v'tura echatu. He meant to know that asvas and tura are actually one and the same variety. Umar zeu yirayar. And mar and yirayar are really one and the same as well. Tani dever shmol. Eli rakis, here's a list of vegetables. She'adam yotzei b'hani dechavasa b'Pesach, that a person could use for mar on Pesach. B'chazeres, with lettuce. B'olshe and endives, or b'tamcha with horseradish, grain. U'b'char vinin, the vine around the palm, ubachar ginin, that's oregano, ubachar dufnin. Actually says yesh meforshin ilushnia. Okay, so we have a list of things which are kasha for marar. Rabbi Yehuda, af chazeres yulin, v'chazeres galin, kayetze behen. These different types of lettuce is also suitable for marar. And the chiddush here is, as Rashi pointed out earlier by the Ulshei Sadeh, that even though it has a Shem Levoy, which is an additional name, has an additional title, it's not your standard Chazeres or standard Ulshin, it's Ulshei Sadeh, wild Ulshin, or here we have Chazeres Galin. It's an additional title. Still, we consider it to be the same variety, the same species, and is Kashef Marar. Rabbi Lo Ima Meshum Belezer, Af Ar Kabalam. Rashi describes this as a thick vine which snakes its way around the palm tree bark. So this is also kasha for marar. The chazarti al kol talmidav, says Rabbi Lo, I made my rounds amongst all the talmidim of Rabbi Lezer. Ubikashti lichaver, I was looking for a colleague, somebody to support my version of events. Rabbi Lo was quoting Rabbi Lezer that this item is kasha for marar, and I looked for support from one of the other talmidim as well. And I couldn't find anybody to support, to corroborate my version. However, when I approached Lezer and Yaakov, he agreed to what I said, that this indeed is considered mar. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol sheyesh le saraf. How do you know that something is kosher for mar? If it's a vegetable that has a milk-like sap inside. Rabbi Yechon Breika Omer, Kol shepanim machsifim. Any vegetable who has a pale green color. You need to have both conditions met. Number one, Kol Yorok Mar, Yesh le Saraf, upon a Machsif. So both things. The Yorok Mar, something which is considered a proper, bitter vegetable and suitable for Mar, has Saraf, that's number one, has that milk-like sap inside. And number two, it's also upon a Machsifim, has a pale green complexion. So according to Acherim, in order for something to be kosher for Mar, you don't have to have dafka the list mentioned in the Mishnah and the subsequent brises. Anything that conforms, anything that has these conditions, it's a saraf and the param machsifim, is considered the marar and kosher for the mitzvah. Amar B'Yechanan, actually, medivrei kulam nilmad, if you take a look at the list in the Mishnah, list in the brises, we can derive and deduce that Yorok Mar, in order for it to be considered bitter vegetables and kosher for marar, it needs to have these two conditions met. Yesh le saraf, it has the milk-like sap, upon a machsifim, and a pale green complexion. So Rabbi Yechon is saying that if we take a closer look at the list in the Mishnah and in the Brises, we will conclude as such, because all those vegetables mentioned conform to this. They all have these two elements, the sap and the green color. Amar Rav Huna, halacha k'achirim. Indeed, the halacha follows the shit of achirim, that any vegetable that contains both these elements, the sap and the color, are kosher for marar. Ravina ashkechet l'Rav Acha breder Rava. Ravina noticed that Rav Acha, the son of Rava, was looking for something. Ava mahader amarirta. He was specifically looking for merirta, this bitter grass, and he would seek that specific variety for maror. Amalei, so he told him, "My daitach, what are you thinking? Why are you preferring that over everything else? The merir and tefei because they're extra bitter, and therefore you prefer using that for maror as opposed to the other varieties." But now Mishnah, which is the first one on the list? Chazeres. Apparently, lettuce is preferred. V'tanad ve'shmol chazeres. And in Tanad ve'shmol as well, we have chazeres as the first on the list. V'amar Reisha, mitzvah b'chazeres. V'amar Rava, my chazeres chasa. What exactly is chazeres? It's a chasa, lettuce. My chasa, why is it called chasa? The chas rachmana ilavan. Because this chazeres is meant to be used as maror, and we call it chasa. In order to remember, the eating of the maror is meant to create a zikaron that Hashem had pity on us and took us out of Mitzrayim. So apparently, this chazeres, this lettuce, is what's meant to be used for maror. Why were the Mitzrayim compared to maror? It says, "Vayimararu is chayim." Why? What's the connection? Lo malach to teach you. Ma maror is it? Just as this maror, referring to lettuce. Although it begins feeling soft and then it hardens to a very high degree. Af Mitzrayim, the same with the Mitzrayim. Tchilas and raka. Initially, it was soft-spoken and they paid the Yidden for wages for their work. So it began softly. V'seif and kasha. At the end, they were very harsh. So chazeres, maror, as compared to the Mitzrayim. Some say that the maror tchilasai rach means that initially it tastes a bit sweet, and then when you chew it, it brings out the bitterness. So for all these reasons mentioned, the fact that in the list we find chazeres is the first. Regarding the name, it's very compatible with the purpose of the chazeres. Regarding its nature, it resembles the Mitzrayim. So for all these reasons, we're meant to prefer actually chazeres. Amar leis, so he responded, Hadri, indeed, I'm chazer, I revert, and I will no longer seek to use merirta, rather, I'll prefer chazeres. Let's take a look at Rashi inside. So Rashi here will be 19 lines from the top of the Amud. Rashi begins with the word sraf. That's a sap. Says Rashi, any vegetable that has a sraf is considered maror. When you squeeze it at the point where it's cut, sraf, lavan, kachala, v'karan light. This latte, this milk-like substance oozes out of the plant. That's the first condition. And the second element is part of machsifim. Ain't a yark moit karsel, polish. It doesn't have that dark green color to it, like a leek. Rather a pale green. Kol yark mar. Tarvayu isle. Any bitter vegetable has both elements. Yesh le sraf, upon machsifim, vehein hein simani mar. So you don't need specifically those mentioned in the Mishnah and the Gemara. Anything that conforms to this, anything that has both conditions, is suitable for maror. And the Gemara says, Medivrei kulam. This was actually Rabbi Yehuda speaking. He says we can bring a raya from all the words, all the lists, the Mishnah, and the Brisa, that indeed maror has to have both elements. Kol mefarshim shmoisei yiraketz kigor mas nisan, v'tanad v'kapara, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir, v'tan v'shmol, mikul lamadno. If we take a close look from all their lists, we can conclude shamaror yesh l'sraf upon machsifim. That in order for it to be considered maror, it needs to have both these elements, the sap and the color. Why? Because all these vegetables, we see these simanim. So we had a story where Ravina noticed that Rav Acha the Rava was seeking to use merirta, puprits. And he challenged him. He says, look, v'hanan, reisha dekul chazeres tanan. Now Mishnah, the first one on the list is not puprits, it's chazeres. V'tanad ve'shmol nami, chazeres tana b'reisha. Alma, he caught me, l'kula. Apparently it's preferred. Mitzvah chazeres. It's a mitzvah to use chazeres. As the Gemara explains, the Farish Taima, the Rav Yonis. So Rav used the name of the chazeres, the chasa, to indicate that this is designated for this purpose. My chasa, my time of Korean chasa. Why do we call it chasa? Mishum the zeichru, the chas rachmana alan al malachikam. Apparently, it's designated for this purpose. And finally, the nature of chazeres indicates the experience resembles the mitzvah. Lama nimshlu kemara dechsiva yimaris chayim. The mitzvah this is because in the beginning, they would pay them for their work. But then they became difficult and harsh. Likewise, the murder. It begins soft and then ends up hardening. Murder, sefikasha, kelach stalk, miskasha case gets very hard. So you respond, yeah, hadribi lo yosef oid, I will no longer prefer the other type, rather, I'm going to prefer chazaras. Continues the Gemara. So we had a whole list of vegetables, green vegetables, bitter vegetables. How do we know that maror is a vegetable? How do you know that maror is a type of vegetable? Perhaps it's a bitter gallbladder of a kufya fish. So he responded, Dumya the matzah. Because matzah and maror are meant to be similar to each other. Where the pasuk connects it to, al matzah is umeroirim yichlu. Therefore, maror is derived from matzah. Ma matzah, gedula karka. Just as matzah is certainly something which grows from the ground, af maror, gedula karka. Maror as well has to be grown from the ground. Ve'ema hirduf, okay, has to be something which grows. But maybe this hirduf, Rashi describes it as a tree which has bitter tasting wood. And this is actually the tree that Moshe Rabbeinu used to sweeten the water. The main maror, which was sweet, and the Chachamim tell us it was a double nace. A nace pesach nace because he sweetened bitter water by using a branch of a tree whose wood is bitter. So he used something bitter to sweeten something which was bitter. A nace pesach nace. So perhaps this is what's meant to be used for maror. Says the Gemara, Dumya the matzah. Because once again, we compare the maror to matzah. And we say ma matzah means roim, just as matzah is produced from a type of seed, grains. Af maror means roim. Likewise, maror needs to be a minz roim, some type of plant, a vegetable, as opposed to a tree. Therefore, we cannot go ahead and use a branch of a tree. Ve'ema harzifu. Perhaps maror is harzifu. Rashi says it's a min zera, which is a samha mavis. Behema, which is a poison for behema. It's not really edible, or perhaps that's what's meant to be used for maror. Do me the matzah. Once again, we compare it to matzah. Ma matzah shenekechas bekesef matzah. Just as matzah, which is something edible, and therefore it can be purchased using matzah sheni money, which could only be applied to something which is a pre-machal. Rashi says, af maror shenikach bekesef matzah. Likewise, maror needs to be something which can be purchased using matzah sheni funds, as opposed to this hirduf, which isn't really edible. Amalei Rabba Barav Chanan Labai. Ema maror chad. How do we know that we can use this large choice, this big list of vegetables, and pick out choice? Maybe maror is only one specific type of vegetable. So he responded, well, the Torah doesn't use a singular term, which indicates that it's more than one type. Okay, maybe two. How do you know? You can compile this entire list here with many vegetables. Dumi the matzah. Once again, we compare maror to matzah. Ma matzah minin harbi. Just as matzah can be produced from a variety of grains, chitim, seirim, etc. Af maror minin harbi. Likewise, when it comes to maror, you can pick your choice. You have many choices, many different types of vegetables are kosher for maror. Amar Rabba Barafun Amarav. Yirakis she'amru chachamim she'adam yotzei beheni dei chavasu b'Pesach. All these vegetables, which the chachamim listed as being okay for mitzvahs maror, kulan nizroin baruga achas. They can all be planted in one single patch, without any concern of kilayim. L'meimer, do you mean to say the less behu mishim kalayim? There's no concern of kalayim because all these maror vegetables are considered to be one and the same species. They're all bitter, they're all maror, and therefore it's not considered mixing different species. Masav Rava. So Rava has the kasha from a Mishnah in Kalayim. Chazeres v'chazeres galan. These two different types of lettuce. Ulshin v'ulshe sadeh. these two different types of endives. Creation, sada, different types of leeks. Kuspar sada, the ordinary coriander and the wild coriander. Chardal mitzri, the ordinary mustard and the mitzri mustard. V'dalas ha-mitzri v'ramutza, and the mitzri dalas together with the dalas, the gourd, the ramutza gourd. So these things are einam kalayim zebazeh. If you plant them together, it's not considered doing kalayim. So we have a diuk. Chazeres galan in. Yeah, mixing the ordinary chazeres with the chazeres galan, that's not considered kalayim. They're close enough in nature. It's not considered mixing two different types. But chazeres v'ulshin loy, it's not Mishnah listed two different types of chazeres, two different types of ulshin. Apparently only the two different types of chazeres can be planted together. Two types of ulshin can be planted together. But if you mix and match a chazeres is an ulshin, you can't go ahead and plant them together. Now, both chazeres and ulshin are considered types of maror. They're on our list. Apparently you can't mix and match the different types of maror. They're not considered one min. So what does Rav mean? That there's no kalayim amongst all the different types of maror. Perhaps you'll reinterpret the Mishnah. Mishnah means to say, Kulu ba'adadi k'tanilu. That all these that are listed in the Mishnah, whether the chazeres, the ulshin, etc., all these that are listed together can be planted together. And indeed, chazeres and ulshin can be planted together. Is that the correct pshat in the Mishnah? No. V'amar Rav himself said, Zugos Ketani. That the Mishnah is simply listing pairs. Chazeres goes together with Chazeres Galan. Ulshin with Ulshay Sad, etc. But you can't mix Chazeres and Ulshin. Says the Gemara, mine is ruined. The Amar Rav. Indeed, what did Rav mean when he said, all those yurakis, all those maror vegetables can be planted in one patch without any kalayim concern? Nizroin kil chasan. He meant to say if they're planted the way they're meant to be planted. As we're going to see soon, there's a Mishnah, there's a halacha, that when we have a small sized patch, 6 by 6 tefachim, we can go ahead and plant 5 different varieties, different minim of vegetables, one on each side of the patch and one in the middle, and there's no concern of kalayim. So that's all Rav meant to say. If you take 5 of these marors, the Mishnah actually listed 5 types of maror. If you take all 5 of them, you can actually plant them in one patch, if it's done properly. Kelchas and tanina. If it's done properly, then what is Rav coming to teach us? We already learned that elsewhere. In Mishnah Kalayim, Aruga shish al shisha tefachim. If you have a patch which is 6 by 6 tefachim, zorin b'seicha chamisha zeroyin. You can plant 5 different varieties in this small sized patch. Arba al arba ruchas aruga. 4, one on each side of the patch, v'achas b'emtza, one in the middle. So what's Rav's chiddush? We know that from our Mishnah. Maldatem, perhaps there'll be room to say, Hani bila bizrayin. This halach only applies to seeds. And Farshim explain, plants where the seeds are eaten, for instance, grains, beans, aval be rakosle. But vegetables which perhaps draw more nourishment than just seeds, they can't be planted in this small patch in this manner, because since they draw a large amount of unique of nourishment, it appears like they're mixing with each other and not being separate enough. So perhaps from the Mishnah I would say it's only applies to Zroy, but not to Yerok. It's Kamash Malan. That's why Rabbi said tell us, no, even when it comes to vegetables, the same thing applies. Is that the pshat? Is that what is Rav's chiddush? Limema, do you mean to say the Yerokah is alimim Israel? That Yerokahs draw more nourishment than seeds? And therefore Rav has to come tell us that even vegetables can be planted together in such close proximity. Is that so? Hatnan, we learned in the Mishnah. Kol min Ezroim ein zer ba'aruga achas. Actually, when it comes to Ezroim, you cannot plant different types of Ezroim in this manner, in this aruga achas. Kol min Yerokahs zer ba'aruga achas. Only vegetables can be planted in this manner. Apparently it's just the opposite. Vegetables draw less nourishment than seeds. So what would be Rav's chiddush? To allow us vegetables? We know that already. This aruga halacha actually only applies to vegetables. Ma'udatema, perhaps I would think, hani murer means roimnenu. Yeah, it's true, vegetables can be planted in this manner. We have a Mishnah that vegetables can be planted in such close proximity to each other. But perhaps murer vegetables are not considered vegetables, they're considered a type of zroim, in which case they cannot. You cannot apply this halacha to them. Kamashmon, that's why Rav will come inform us that no, murer, all these murer vegetables are considered yirakis and can be planted 5 in a patch. Says the Gemara, why would I think it's zroim? Zroim sakataitach? Why would I think that the different types of murer are halachically regarded as zroim? Well, it's not yirakis. How Mishnah begins by saying, ve'elu yirakis, and gives us a list of murer vegetables. V'tani bakapar yirakis. The Brisa bakapar as well refers to them as yirakis. V'tani dvei shmul yirakis. So everybody's referring to them as yirakis. Of course, they can be planted close together in the patch. What would be Rav's chiddush? Chazeres itzrichle. Rav needs to inform us that this concept applies to chazeres, to lettuce as well. Why would I think not? Perhaps there would be room to think, since eventually the lettuce, the stalk, is going to harden and get larger and larger. Perhaps you need to give it more space. And this chazeres cannot be planted together with another 4 types of vegetables in one small patch. A lettuce, due to its large size, is not suitable for this halach. As we find elsewhere, Lav Amar Rabbi Yisrael Chanina. Did Rabbi Yisrael Chanina tell us, Kelach shel kruv, this head of cabbage, the stalk of cabbage, shehuksha, which hardened, marchivim le beis reva. You need to give it enough space. You need to give it its own area. Beis reva, Rashi says, is a place where you can plant a quarter of a kav, which is about 10 amas by 10 amas. So we treat it differently than an ordinary vegetable due to its large size. Apparently, since it's going to harden and get larger, you have to give it more space. Here as well, when it comes to the chazeres, I would think, you need to give it more space. Therefore, Rav teaches us, no, apparently it doesn't grow as large as this cabbage. And therefore, all different types of murer vegetables, including cabbage, can be planted within close proximity to each other. Even 5 of them in this small size patch, as long as it's done properly. 1 on each side and 1 in the middle. Continues the Gemara. Yoitzin behen, ben lachen ben yiveshin. Mishnah tells us all these different types of bitter vegetables can be used for murer, whether they are lach, they're fresh and moist, or whether they're dry. Amram Chizir leishano, this allowance to use dry murer only applies ella bekelach, only when we're using this stalk. Rashi explains, because even when it dries, it doesn't really dry through and through and still maintains its bitterness. Aval ba'alin, but when we speak about leaves, no, that's different. Lachen in, only if they're moist and fresh, do they still have their bitter taste. Yiveshin loy, but if they're dry, once they're so brittle that they crumble upon contact, they're not suitable any longer for murer because they lost their bitter flavor. So that's Rav Chiz's chiddush. Yiveshin only applies to the kelach, but not to the leaves. But if we take a look at the next part of the Mishnah, which says bekelach shelahen, that you can be yaitze even using their stalk. That's in the second part of the Mishnah, which references the stalk. Miklal, apparently, the ratio. Olin. The first portion of the Mishnah, which discusses lach and yiveshin, is in reference to leaves. Because we haven't yet discussed stalks. So apparently, even dry leaves are kosher. Pirusha kamafarish. The Mishnah is simply explaining itself. Kiktani ben lachem and yiveshin. When could you apply this halach? What do we mean when we said you can use moist or dry? Akelach. It's only strictly in reference to the stalk. Meisvei, avakashma brais. Yoitze behen. You can be yoitze using all these different types of murer. Ubekel shlehen. You can be yoitze using their leaves and with their stalks. Bein lachem and yiveshin. Whether moist or dry. Divrei meir. It's very clear, according to a mayor, you can use dry maror leaves. If they're fresh and moist, you can be yotze. Yivation ain't yotze behen, not if they're dry. Now they all agree, both Rameh and the Chacham agree, she yotze behen, you can only be yotze with them. Kamushin, if they're Rishavin, they both agree, she yotze behen kamushin. Even though the Chachamim disagreed when it came to dry, but everybody agrees when they're just withered, that's still considered fresh enough to maintain its bitterness, and even the Rabbanon agree that it's kosher. Aval, everybody agrees that you can't be yotze if they're loy kvushin, not if they're pickled, loy shlukin, overcooked, loy v'shalom, plainly cooked. Kol shadavar. The rule of thumb is kol sheyesh by tamar yotze by. If the thing still has a bitter flavor, it can be yotze. V'chol she'ein by tamar, but once it's lost, it's tamar, it's cooked, it's pickled, ain't yotze by, you can't use it. At any rate, we see that according to Reb Meir, even dry leaves are kosher. Tirguma akelach. Let's interpret. Let's apply these words of Reb Meir. They can use even something which is dry only in reference to the kelach. So strictly stalks which are dry, Reb Meir allows. But of course, even Reb Meir would agree that dry leaves don't maintain their bitterness any longer and cannot be used for maror. Tanarabban, ein yotze ben kmushin. You can't use them even when they're withered. Mishum lezer tzadik amru. Yotze ben kmushin. You can use them when they're withered because they still maintain somewhat their bitterness. Okay, so we had a Mishnah which told us that the following items can be used for maror, and the Mishnah gave us a whole list. We have a list in the Bryce as well. The Gemara concluded that the general klal is maror is learned from matzah. We draw a parallel from one to the other, and therefore, just as matzah is gedula karka, something which grows, maror has to be something gedula karka. Just as matzah is a minzroim, likewise maror has to be some type of plant, some type of vegetable, and just as matzah is eichel, it's edible, maror as well has to be something edible. And just as matzah can be produced from a choice of many different types of grain, likewise maror is not specific to one or two types, but we have a full range of bitter vegetables that can be used for maror. What is considered something kosher for maror? Not necessarily does it have to be on that list in the Mishnah or the Brisa, but any type of vegetable which exhibits both signs. Yeshle soraf, it has this milk-like sap inside, and number two, panav machsif, it has this pale green color. Any of these bitter vegetables are kosher for maror. Now regarding freshness, if they are lachen, if they're fresh and moist, of course they're okay. If the kelach, the stalk, is dry, of machlekes. According to Rameir, it's still kosher. According to the Chacham, it's not. If it is withered, if the leaves are withered, according to Tanakama, it cannot be used. According to Rabbi Yehuda Kessler, it can. All agree, kvushin, pickle, shlukin, v'shalom, cooked, overcooked. These vegetables have lost their bitterness, lost their flavor, and cannot be used for maror. Continues the Gemara. Boy Rami Barcham. Rami Barcham poses the shaila. Maush yetz adam idei chavasai. B'maror shel maser sheni b'Yerushalayim. Can a person be yotze using maser sheni in Yerushalayim for mitzvahs maror? Now, I'll leave it to Rabbi Akiva like Tibalach. We actually had a machlokes when it came to matzah. Rabbi Yitzchak says maser sheni cannot be used for matzah because it's lechem oini, and the drasha is only something which is nechal ba'aninas. A person is allowed to eat when he's in a state of grief of aninas, as opposed to maser sheni, which needs to be eaten b'simcha, and therefore cannot be used for lechem oini. So that was Rabbi Yitzchak sheet. Rabbi Akiva disagreed. He didn't have that drasha, but he agreed that we learn from the words b'chol meshvesechem teichlu matzos that only something which can potentially be eaten outside Yerushalayim can be used for matzah. Therefore, when it came to bikurim, for instance, that can't be eaten outside Yerushalayim. Even Rabbi Akiva agreed it can't be used for matzah. The reason why he allowed matzah sheni, even though it's in Yerushalayim, and once something is in Yerushalayim, it can't be taken out, because even that material has potential, can theoretically be eaten outside Yerushalayim. The Gemara tells us because if it becomes tamei, you can go and redeem it. So now the Gemara is going to present a question regarding murr made from Maaseh Sheni. Let's analyze. I'll leave the Rekiva Lati Boilach. According to Rekiva, who says that even when it comes to matzah, where the matzah grains are chayiv in Trumas HaMaisus min HaTorah, so that Maaseh Sheni is Maaseh Sheni min HaTorah. So even there, he says, it's okay, you can use it for matzah, and the reason was, as we explained, because it potentially can be taken out of Yerushalayim if it gets tummy and you redeem it. So there's no question according to him. There's no question. Why? Hashta b'matzah deraisa nafka. Since we find that even when it comes to matzah, which is chayiv and Maaseh Sheni min HaTorah, it's a grain, so the Maaseh Sheni status is min HaTorah, you can still be yoytze with it, it's a matzah. B'marer the rabbanim b'bayah, certainly by marer, where, as Rashi explains, min HaTorah there's no chayiv of trumas and masos by vegetables. The Maaseh Sheni status is only the rabbanim. So of course, you can be yoytze with marer, which is Maaseh Sheni, because if you can be yoytze with the Maaseh Sheni that rice, of course, marer, which is the rabbanon, is suitable for marer, and we consider it something that can be eaten outside Yerushalayim b'chol meshusech. So according to Rekiva, there's no question. However, according to Beis HaGlili, perhaps we can have a shayla. Kiti boilach aliba der Beis HaGlili. What is Allah? Perhaps we can draw a distinction between matzah and marer. But matzah d'oraisa d'lenafik. Maybe when it comes to matzah, where the Maaseh Sheni status is min HaTorah, so you can't be yoytze using Maaseh Sheni for the mitzvah of matzah. Aval marer d'rabbanon nafik. But when it comes to marer, which is merely even d'rabbanon, perhaps you can go ahead and be yoytze with this marer Maaseh Sheni. Perhaps the restriction that's applied to Maaseh Sheni matzah because of the d'oraisa nature won't apply to the marer where the Maaseh Sheni is only d'rabbanon. Since it's only d'rabbanon, Chacham did not perhaps consider it like Maaseh Sheni min HaTorah, and they would allow you to be yoytze with it for the sake of marer. Or perhaps no. Call the tikkun rabbanon, kein d'oraisa tikkun. You can't differentiate between Maaseh Sheni d'oraisa, Maaseh Sheni d'rabbanon. Whenever the Chacham established the akana, it was generally modeled after the din Torah. So just as Maaseh Sheni min HaTorah, like the grains used for matzah, cannot be used for matzah because, as we explained, there is a limit, a restriction. You can't use Maaseh Sheni for matzah. The same thing when it comes to marer. You can't go ahead and use Maaseh Sheni for marer, even though it's only Maaseh Sheni d'rabbanon. It carries the same restrictions as the Maaseh Sheni min HaTorah. So which way is it? Amarava, Mistavra. It's logical to say matzah and marer. That matzah and marer go together. Rashi says we have a hekesh to connect the two, and we don't differentiate. So the same halacha applies to matzah, applies to marer. Marer, Maaseh Sheni, according to Beis HaGlili, is not kosher. Continues the Gemara. Ein shirinis amursin l'tanagolim. One may not soak bran for the sake of feeding his chickens. Avol choltin. But he can go ahead and scald it, pour boiling hot water on it. So the immediate cooking effect will prevent the chametz from developing. Ha'isha le'sishra es amursin. Likewise, a isha should not soak bran, which is going to take along to the merchatz used as a scrubbing agent. But she can go ahead and scrub it on her basar, yavish, when it's still dry, unsoaked. And the chiddush here is, even if there's some moisture on her basar, that little bit of moisture won't affect the bran and make it chametz. The concern with the mursin is, due to the presence of some flour particles inside, we're concerned about soaking it and making it chametz. Says the Mishnah, Lo ilois adam chitin. A person should not chew wheat, and place it on his wound. Why? It's because we're concerned about them becoming chametz through the chewing process. Let's see Rashi. Right before the wide lines. See, masnissen? Cholten. So you can't soak the bran, but you can be cholet. What does that mean? Pour boiling hot water on it. By doing so, it doesn't allow it to become chametz. This is the isha. She shouldn't soak the mursan. V'pnei shemachmitz b'shviyasa, because the soaking process can make it chametz. Abel shofehi mursan yavish b'bsara. She could take dry bran and scrape it against her flesh. V'afal b'shamayim toivchen b'sara, even though there's some moisture on her basar, that's not enough to make it chametz. Finally, lu'ais la'yakos, a person chew raw wheat to use as a remedy, because that itself can make it chametz. Continues the Gemara. Tana Rabbanan. Ela dvarim shein boim lechimutz. The following things entail no chimutz concern. Ha'afay, something which is already baked. So even if you take that baked item and you soak it in water, it won't become chametz, because something baked is beyond chametz. V'amavushal, something which was cooked. V'cholet shechote b'roischin, or something which was scalded with boiling hot water. So once it underwent this process, cooking, baking, scalding, it will no longer become chametz. Mevushal, so something which is cooked carries no concern of chametz. How are you going to cook it? As you're cooking it, during the cooking process itself, it will become chametz. You place the grain inside cool water, then you heat it up. So while it's sitting there, before it gets boiling, it can come chametz. So Rashi says, if you dump it into boiling water, that's chaluta. That won't make it chametz. But generally speaking, that's not how you cook. You place it with liquid on a flame, and then you slowly warm it up. Amar Papa, you're right. There's no way to cook grain without any chametz concern. The Brisa meant ha'afush bishlikam. The Brisa says the following things have no chametz concern. Ha'afay v'amavushal wasn't two separate things. Ha'afay bishlikam, something which was previously baked can then be cooked. So even if you take it and you cook it, there's no concern because it was already baked and will no longer become chametz. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Kemach shenafal l'soichei delaf. If you have a delaf, you have a drip, water dripping into flour. Afilu kol hayom kula, even if this is happening throughout the entire day and it's very wet, eino yiba l'dei chimutz, it won't become chametz. Why? Because the dripping process, the fact that the water is pounding down on the flour, will prevent fermentation. Amar Papa, v'huda avid tif ladatif, provided that we have successive drips, right, one after the other, so that pounding process will prevent the chimutz. Let's see Rashi. 5 lines from the bottom. It says Rashi delaf min agag, something dripping off the roof. Ein bol de chimutz. It won't become chametz. Why? Shetirud hadelaf hanefel tamid eina machnis lahachmetz, because it is pounding. The fact that the water is dripping down, it's going to disrupt the process. It won't allow it to ferment. The Gemara says that's only if it's tif lahadi tif. Shenefel tipach hatipa. We have drip after drip, samach v'tekev in close succession. Veishus b'nsayim with no time in between. It keeps on dripping and dripping. That constant action will prevent the chimutz. Continues the Gemara 4 lines from the bottom. Amri devei Rabbi Shila. V'tika shari. This type of dish made with flour is mutter. There's no concern of chametz. V'atanya, we learned in a brayso, v'tika aser. It's aser to eat. There's a concern of chimutz. So which way is it? Like kasha, the answer is, depends what's inside. Hod avdei mishcha milcha. If he created his dish using oil and flour without any water, then there's no concern of chimutz. Hod avdi mayu milcha. But if you made it with using water and salt, in that case, the concern of the flour becoming chametz. Olam hazutra, lo'ilimchi inish kidra. A person shouldn't thicken food cooking in his pot. Bekimcha, using flour, the avishna, flour of roasted grain. Why? Once it's roasted, how would it become chametz? There's a concern. Dilma le bashal shaper. Perhaps it wasn't roasted through and through properly, and there's still some unroasted particles there. V'aseh chimutz. And I place it in your dish in a pot. We have some liquid there, which perhaps will turn this flour into chametz. Okay, let's review today's daf. We began with the Mishnah providing a list of various items that can be used for mitzvahs, maror. The Mishnah tells us you can go ahead and even combine different types of vegetables. Ran says the chiddush here is, although maror needs to have a bitter flavor, and each vegetable has its own unique, distinct flavor, you can still mix them together because they'll have something in common, the bitterness. And even when joining various types together, you still have that bitterness, and therefore it's suitable for mar. The Gemara tells us that the rule of thumb when it comes to determining whether something is used for mar is as follows. It needs to be gedula karka, a type of yarek, edible, and this is all learned from the fact that we connect mar to matzah. And finally, that we have different choices, not only limited to one or two. So what are the simanim of this bitter mar? Number one, yesh l'sarf, it has to have this whitish sap inside, and number two, part of machsifin, a pale green complexion. When they're fresh, all agree it's mutter. When the kelach, the stalk is dry, a machlekes. Kontra Rameh, it's still bitter enough for mar. Kontra Chacham, it can't be used. When it's withered, leaves are kmushin. Tanakama holds it cannot be used any longer. Kontra Rabbi Yaakov still retains some sort of bitterness, which is enough for mar. All agree kvushin, pickled, shlukin, overcooked, mashal, plainly cooked, have lost their bitterness and are not kosher for mar. We learned that lechatchila, one is meant to prefer chazeres. We see that it's the first one in the Mishnah. Its name, chasa, indicates that it's meant to be used for something to give us the zikaron that Hashem had rachmanas, chas, rachman alaman. The nature of letters resembles the nature of the Mitzrayim, began soft, ended hard. We learned that one cannot be yotze with maror of Masasheni, according to Beis HaGlili. We compare maror to matzah. We learned that a person is not meant to go ahead and soak his bran. We learned that if something is already fully baked, fully cooked, there's no longer concern of chimutz. And we learned that if there's a dripping into flour, that disrupts the process of chimutz, and there's no concern of chimutz in that case. Zayigzat, Atzlacha Rabbah.